intelligence is, isn't biased. So back to my previous explanations, right? Uh, Long story short, once again, artificial intelligence is a tool which humans use, us people use to basically do anything nowadays. Um, I have had previous experience with my artificial intelligence, such as Replit, ChatGPT, and uh, and that was for my engineering class in my high school, right? So my teacher encouraged the use of AI because, well, he's one of the teachers that encouraged the use of AI because, once again, AI isn't really somebody else doing the work for you. It's a program that humans have built over time, and then it is essentially technology that's going to push the world forward. And then, as a technology teacher himself, he encourages the use of AI. So, but yeah, that's my previous experience with it. So, one of the issues that was perfectly clear in terms of artificial intelligence was the bias they have against other people, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this discussion as of right now. But firstly, right? Uh, how like how how can an artificial intelligence, how can zeros and ones and computer code and programs be bias towards certain groups of people, have bias towards certain groups of people, right? And I will be frank. It depends on the people who programmed it, right? So engineering is sort of engineering, in my experience, in my personal experience, is more of a melting pot, if anything. For example, right? Take the city of Houston. That's one melting pot we have right there. But engineering is like a melting pot where people who not only have like their certain skills, but also the mindset of an engineer. Like you don't have to succeed in one area to become an engineer. You can be successful in coding, you can be successful in designing, building, and whatnot. It's not just one simple thing like mathematics or just English for that matter. You could just there's so many fine things in engineering that like it isn't just building. It is that there's so many fine things you can do with it, and that allows like a lot of other people to include themselves into like certain aspects of it, right? uh, Same thing with artificial intelligence or just anything really. But so the reason why bias exists in AI is because of the people who program them, right? So artificial intelligence is made by people. Obviously, it wasn't like some sort of Skynet thing from from Terminator or whatnot. No, no, no. No, people over the ages, there have been some there have been like tests of artificial intelligence as back in like the 1900s. So it's not a new concept. It's a concept that has been worked on for years, for decades. But it has to deal with the start of the device has to deal with the programmers, right? They 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 app, they tweak the code here, they take the code here, and sometimes it's just like the same group of people working on the entire thing. Meanwhile, like a good thing to do would be to have like multiple people micromanage yourself and others as to not have the same issues. So like once like a group of people start working on an artificial intelligence, right? Once the group of people have artificial intelligence um, made, 9 times out of 10 they will have. It might not be intentional, but there will be bias against some groups of people, right? An example of this is if, let's say, an all female engineering team made an artificial intelligence. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying potentially there could be more biases against men than there is women. And then and then our job as engineers, well, as my job as an engineer, whenever I go into the field, is to basically try to lower the amount of bias that our artificial intelligence has against other people. So, how do we solve it, right? Uh, well, honestly, it's going to it's not difficult. Let me explain it, right? The reason why I say it isn't difficult is because it makes sense for the answer, right? The way for all of us, the way for artificial intelligence to be unbiased truly is to make sure basically everybody puts in their 2 cents. Everybody throws in a code. Everybody micromanages each other. And I'm not talking about like everybody in the group, right? You have to be inclusive. The whole point of an artificial intelligence project is to be inclusive as to make sure there isn't any biases against one another, right? So dude here, female here, black person here, Asian here, white person here, Indian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Like you just need to make sure that everybody throws in their 2 cents, and then make you have to make sure that the entire thing you're building is essentially a giant neutral party, which is which is I'm gonna be honest with you, it's impossible. I'm I'm being honest with you because the whole point of humanity at this point, right, is that like we have, whether we want to or not, there will be some underlying bias towards other people, and then sometimes the artificial intelligence develops their own bias, right? So artificial intelligence, they don't know everything. They recognize patterns basically. So if I remember correctly, the artificial intelligence. Let me see. Okay. So there's three types of learning that the AI goes through, right? There's supervised learning, there's unsupervised learning, and then there's reinforcement learning, right? So, firstly, supervised learning. I don't have the definition on me as of right now. However, it's basically, long story short, is just when it learns from already labeled data, right? So basically, we feed it data. So basically, that's what happens. So it makes patterns off of the data we feed it, and then unsupervised will be it learns from unlabeled data. So like data that isn't labeled is just raw data that we feed it, and then as for reinforcement learning, right? It's basically how the AI learns and recognizes patterns to make new guesses and whatnot. So combining all these aspects into one artificial intelligence, into like one thing, right? The AI has the potential to learn from mistakes, never make that same mistake again. All right. Well, I can't really say never, right? But like for example, right? Let's say you give it a calculus problem, and it doesn't solve it, and then you give the AI, like literally you walk the AI through the work, so that's the reason why he got the answer wrong. The AI, the artificial intelligence, will be able to recognize that pattern. It will be able to recognize the formula, and then it'll understand why I got the answer wrong. And then later on, that data is saved. Essentially digested by the artificial intelligence, and then it's basically saved for later. So when you give it another problem that is somewhat similar, it can get the right answer, right? It will get the right answer until it encounters another problem, or you have to hand feed it data again in order to continue the loop. It's basically looping. It's a With artificial intelligence, it's a continuous uh, fail. It's a continuous trial and error process, essentially, right? It succeeds, good, right? It fails, you explain to it why it failed. It learns how. It keeps the reason like why it failed. It learns it and then saves it for later and then uses it again. That's one of the important aspects of artificial intelligence, right? But then there is another issue, right? The biases is the bias isn't in like there's also like when it comes to artificial intelligence, right? That it's not the only tool where it has biases and whatnot, right? For example, there are tools which use machine systems uh, to basically work for them. essentially, right? Long story short, the medicinal needs, such as how Gordy Slack from the article, well, not really the article, from the website stanfordmedicine.edu, it is explained that medicinal practices also has biases and whatnot, which is a really big thing because like when it comes to like healthcare and whatnot, though, those are really sensitive issues and whatnot. And then, but the reason oh, most the reason why ESTA eliminated biases from artificial intelligence is a really big issue. Like it's a big priority is because of the fact even though it is technically impossible, at the end of the day, um, there can and there will be circumstances where because of said bias, something wrong will occur, right? Because 9 times out of 10, if guess you let's say you're in a scenario, right? You have two people. You have your friend, and then you have a person you utterly despise, right? And they're both telling you, "Hey, this is what happened. There was a fight." You ask both of them, "Hey, what happened?" And then they'll say both of them say they'll start it, right? So 9 times out of 10, right? You'll believe your friend first, right? But the twist of this scenario is that like the friend started the fight first. So based on like your previous data, which is your long lasting friendship with the friendly individual you would 9 times out of 10 believe him instead of the person that you detest, utterly detest, which is like a really, I guess, similar example. I'm really bad at making examples. Sorry about that, but other than that, it's just it's just how it's just the way that it's built and the way that it learns from other examples that makes it the issue because like we can't like as I said earlier there are people in this world who believe themselves to be unbiased to certain people but like that's practically impossible. Like I say impossible because you can't like let's say you're biased towards your parents, you'll believe your parents more than anything else. You'll believe people you know over strangers. You believe your friends over people you don't consider a friend. It's just a constant thing. It's not just about racism or per se or sexism or all that. It's all about like the subconscious belief of basically safety. I'm saying, and not to mention, and in regards to Charles Boltini. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but it was and the website NIST.gov, right? He said that it is so has a relation result or so has a realization that its results can be thrown off by biases in the data it's fed. Yeah, as I said earlier, due to the fact that you are feeding it data with biases, right? It will essentially throw off it's sensing, right? Like I said earlier, you will believe your friend didn't start the fight, but in actuality, the friend did indeed start the fight, which is a good example, I believe. uh, and then another aspect, right, is that according to Aisha Nadim, Babak Ebedin, and Olivia Marjanovic, and the isil.aznet.org website, Um, it also said that most often, there is bias towards different genders, like towards gender specifically. You would notice the racism more than the gender, but there isn't like I'm saying earlier that there isn't just racism towards like there isn't just bias towards racism. It's like gender and is about gender and whatnot, race, it's really it's really specific about that. It's because AI is like it you might not mean it at the end of the day, right? You might not intentionally do it, but at the same time, like